Hello, I'm Brad.
And I'm Jason.
You are listening to
Dice in Mind.
You and I have been talking about a blog for a while and what we wanted to do. We've written up some content. It's been sitting out there. We just haven't quite known how to launch it. And then you and I got this idea about what if we were to write our gaming adventures
Yeah.
and put them in blog form. And then a couple weeks ago, like it was Kismet or whatever,
Yep.
Jim messages us and says,
Yep.
"Hey, I have something. We can't talk about it yet. But let's have if you don't mind, let's talk about this in an episode, but we can't launch it until a certain date,
Until today.
until today.
Until today.
So what you're going to be hearing is something that we recorded, I think about a week and a half ago, I want to say, or a week ago,
Even a little more. Yeah.
maybe 2 weeks
Yeah,
ago. Yeah, you're
we've
right,
had
because you went up north.
because I went up
Yes.
north, and so we've been sitting. So everybody, we've been sitting on this for a few weeks, keeping our lips shut to the world because we've had the PDF of the book that Jim's going to talk about that dropped officially this morning, an hour ago as this releases. We've had this for weeks. We've been using it in our writing and our gaming and geeking out hard about it because it's that good. And we are thrilled to talk about it today.
Yeah, and so it's Captain's Log.
Yeah, Star Trek Adventures, Captain's Log.
Log. It's going to Jim will be better able to explain
Yeah.
it once you hear the interview, but ultimately my perspective, and I think yours probably more eloquent than mine, this gives us the ability to use the Star Trek Adventures engine
Yep.
and source material and anything else we want
Mm-hmm.
to one, do solo adventures,
Mm-hmm.
but more importantly, what really caught us
Right.
is to write fan fiction.
Literally to write.
And you can use the STA engine for it.
Mm-hmm.
You can do however you want with it. The material, this is probably the best book I have ever seen when it comes to using one RPG as lit and
Yes.
using the material and teaching you and showing you how to write fan fiction in the Star Trek universe.
I think we should just go straight to our chat with Jim.
Yeah.
All right. Enjoy, everybody. Jim Johnson is the author of the Pistols and Pyramids series, the Potomac Shadows series, and other prose fiction series currently under development. He has written sundry other pieces of fiction, including several stories published in the Star Trek universe, and has freelanced for pen and paper role-playing game companies, including Modiphius, Star Trek Adventures, Decipher, the Lord of the Rings RPG, and White Wolf, Mage the Ascension. Jim lives in historic Alexandria, Virginia, with his wife, toddler, and a pair of crazy cats.
Jace, you and I have been talking a while about this idea of RPG as lit.
Yep.
And we've been talking about the idea of using the idea of solo playing or writing, using RPGs as as writing material as a mechanism for writing. So today, Modiphius announced the new what's the best way to put this? I don't even know how to say it's Star Trek Adventures. I don't even know how to call it. The Captain's Log solo role-playing game. And Jim Johnson from Modiphius, project manager for Star Trek Adventures, is back with us because he knows that this is an area of passion for us. And announcing this book, let's be honest, Jace, you and I have been poring over the PDF now, just nonstop.
And I mean, Jim, so first of all, thank you so much for coming back yet again for the surprise part 3 of our 2-part interview with you. It was so kind of you to reach out to us right after we had finished this last one. But you and we know this, we told you this, but I don't remember if it was, well, I think it ended up being in part 2 of the interview, but when we were talking a little while ago now, recording the last time, you started talking, of course, about RPGs as lit, and Brad and I thought, well, this is just dumb. Like, we're probably the only people who like look at this stuff like we just want to read it. And you opened our eyes to, well, no, in fact, this is probably really quite common. And little did we know that it was so common that for the past year, you guys have been actively working on a product that not only expands Star Trek Adventures and expands the entry points, but just, I think, blatantly calls it out as this isn't only RPG.
Yeah.
This is literature, and this is a way to just onboard in any way you want. So I will stop. You tell us about it if you would, because this is, I mean,
What was the
loved,
genesis?
yeah,
What was the
loved every
genesis for
book, but
developing in this? But
this is
'cause it's
incredible.
Genesis is perfectly appropriate. So
Yeah.
first of all, Brad, Jason, thank you so much for having me on the show yet again. This is what 5, 6 times, I don't know. I've lost count now, especially because we have to keep breaking up the episodes into chunks because I just go on and on and on, right? But so thank you so much for having me on and to be able to talk about Star Trek and talk about literature and writing and all that great stuff. Also, if it's appropriate for me to say so, thank you so much for the gift.
Promise is a promise. You're welcome.
You joked about a smoking jacket.
Yeah.
And for the audience, of course, this isn't a video. This is just audio. But I got a package in the mail today, and literally today, the day we're recording it.
Good.
And it was a beautiful, beautiful 30th anniversary Deep Space Nine sweatshirt, right from the Paramount Star Trek website, which I'm extraordinarily grateful for. And I think I was telling you guys right before we started recording that last year I bought one of the Pride Star Trek sweatshirts that I really, really like. But literally the second day I bought it, I put my hands in the front pocket and the seam ripped. And so the stupid thing is broken and it's just not working quite right. I'm like, man, I can't even carry stuff in it anymore because I'm kind of a kangaroo. Like I wear the shorts, I got the sweatshirt on, and I love the winter because I can put all my crap in my pockets and I'm good to go. But because the flap is broken, like everything just falls out. And I'm like, this is useless. But it's comfortable, right? And so this is this new sweatshirt, the DS9 sweatshirt, same fabric, same material, everything else. I'm going to wear it. I'm going to wear it until it wears out. And
Good.
But thank you so much for that. Again, thank you for the support of the game, Modiphius, and myself. I just love talking to you guys. And
we love talking to you.
Not to be humble, but like I see the quality of guests that you're able to pull consistently week after week, and I'm like, what are you doing? Just talking to the Star Trek Adventures RPG guy? Like you got these super luminaries out there that you're on a regular basis, and
I mean, we see it. Jim, we
time to hang out.
We see it the other way. I mean, like, okay, first of all, like, I regularly will record with someone, and I'll go upstairs, and my wife will obligatorily ask, "Hey, how'd it go?" and every time it's like, babe, I have absolutely no idea why any of these people talk to us, but I'm not to provide some fan service here, but I'm really serious when I say I'm even more emphatic about that when we talk with you, because it's like it's always like it's neat getting a range of people. We're really grateful for that. But kind of like you said, Jim, we know when we get to chat with you, whether it's like informal or something like this for the podcast, we know we are just going to be able to riff, and we're going to love it, and we're going to learn something, and we're going to geek out along the way, right? And that's just really hard to find. So, I mean, God, no, please.
And we learn. I mean, we had an episode where we talked about writing and how the process of writing and how you go through that, and writing and how to submit material. I mean, these are educational episodes. And I said before we record that it's in some ways self-serving because we get to talk to people.
Oh, it's 100% self-serving.
I know, but that we normally wouldn't get an opportunity to chat with, and you're included in that. And so, I've been buying STA stuff since it launched in 2017. So being able to talk to the point person on that, to me is that's a big deal to me. Yeah. So
okay, so Star Trek Adventures Captain's Log.
So that's back on point, right? Yeah.
I mean, my God. So, and I mean, I'm clinically trained. I know how not to, shall we say, break the fourth wall. But we've talked to you so much about some of these relevant issues, and you have managed to, with a completely straight face, give absolutely nothing away, and yet still fully engage in these conversations, which, if you guys can't all see Jim, but he looks so pleased with this right now, and deservedly so. And and still stay engaged with the conversation. But like you said, right before we clicked record, like we've been talking about this with you so much, and now you are releasing this solo guide, which is a discussion in and of itself. And as much as like we have loved, I keep looking over to my right because I've got all the books right there. As much as we have loved the books that have come out, and I am especially enamored with the the GM and the player's guides, because those are just works of beauty in and beyond the game. But but this captain's log, this is something else. I mean, this is even the editing, like just flipping through the PDF. It's my opinion, the cleanest book that's come out yet. I mean, just visually, the layout, the tone, everything. It's like you can see how it's evolved, right? And that's not even addressing the content, which again, so okay, so that's enough from us. So how did this get started? I mean, why would you even do something like this?
Yeah, great. So great comments. Always appreciated. Very grateful for all that. So I'd say, gosh, I'd have to find my notes, and I didn't prepare for this because I just wanted to talk to you guys.
Yeah.
I think it must have been the fall of 2021 where Sam Webb, who was the Star Trek PM before me, she moved into a different role at Modiphius, but she was still kind of like supporting me as if you're into the agile methodology, she's the visionary for Star Trek Adventures. So like I'm the project manager, any kind of like budgetary stuff or conceptual stuff, she reviews it with me, and then we go through feasibility and all that crap to get the projects greenlit. Anyway, Sam is a big fan of solo RPGs, and of one in particular called Ironsworn.
Yes.
Ironsworn
Yes.
Starforged.
Oh, yes.
So it's the first Ironsworn is a fantasy solo RPG, and then the developers created a science fiction version called Starforged.
Starforged, yeah.
And somewhere in that cycle, she came to me and said, I think we might want to do a solo RPG of Star Trek Adventures. And at that time, I'll be brutally honest, other than the old classic choose your own adventure books,
right,
that you remember back in the day, the flip books, I wasn't really into the solo RPG scene, partly because I've told you guys for the last 7 years I've been living in a Star Trek Adventures bubble. Like that, this has been my entire creative life for a long time now, and like I'm kind of peripherally aware of other RPGs that are coming out, and like I got friends in the industry, and I've got friends that just game, and like sometimes I'll see new cool stuff that's coming out, and I'll be like, oh, I'll go check that out. Or I'm on Kickstarter or something, checking out some of the new RPGs that are coming out. But like the whole solo vibe, kind of like I just kind of missed it because I wasn't really. I mean, I just don't have the time to play a solo RPG.
Right.
But it didn't even occur to me that we should do something like that. Like I know some fans here and there were talking about, I just can't find any players or game masters to play with. Is there any way to play the game solo? And I'm like, well, I don't know, I guess. I mean, it just didn't occur to me to think about it. But, Sam approached me and said, I think we should look into the feasibility of doing a solo RPG version of Star Trek. And I was like, okay. So then I took it upon myself to do some research. I went and got Ironsworn. I went and got Starforged. I went and got, I think, a few other ones that I don't even remember the names of. I got a pile of books over here, and I got a bunch of PDFs as well. And I did some research, and we had just finished doing the player guide and game master guide, and so all that additional writing advice, game mastering advice that we put into those two books was still very fresh in my mind, and in some of the writers' minds, and I just kind of kicked it around for a while, kicked it around and put some ideas together, and tied into the realization that like a lot of us run Star Trek Adventures super light, right? We don't really focus on the mechanics quite so much. It's really more about the storytelling and the dramatic interplay and the characterization and the character development. And it was like, oh, I think these two things fit together really, really well. If we take the existing rule set, streamline it, drop in tons of random tables, oracles or whatever you want to call them. We call them probability matrices.
I love that
in the book, just to give it something different, because we didn't want to be blatantly ripping off somebody else who calls them oracles or whatever other terms that are out there in the solo RPG, zeitgeist or whatever. But so the fall of 2021 was mostly research, development, thinking about it, and then come the start of the new year, so 2022, that's when I got really into the weeds about the outline. Okay, what does this book need to have in order for it to be an effective product? And I think part of that too is if you're familiar with the whole agile methodology, whatever, we needed to do a feasibility study, and then once we did the feasibility study, we did the prioritized requirements. So that's where we go in and say, okay, this product must have X, Y, and Z. Yeah. It should have X, Y, and Z. It could have X, Y, and Z. And just by working through that list with Sam and a couple other folks, we just kind of like figured out, okay, this product could be something that could have much broader appeal to Star Trek fans than just the core audience that we normally target for our products, right? We're not just targeting Star Trek Adventures, hardcore gamers who've been with us for 7 years. This is an opportunity for us to really branch out and find those casual Star Trek fans, new Star Trek fans, the fan fiction writers who I love, because like that's literally how I got started, was writing fanfic for Star Trek, and then somehow it got published, and then went on from there. But like there's a very broad audience that I think this book could appeal to. And so as we worked through that and started adding that to our to our Moscow list, it was like, oh gosh, okay, and that really helps shape what was going to be in the book, right? Because it wasn't just going to be rules and random tables. It needed to introduce Star Trek to a whole new audience, right? So you gotta, and fortunately, again, because we had just worked on the Player's Guide and the Game Master Guide, we had a lot of that content in our head already. Like, because if you remember the Player Guide, Game Master Guide, that starts off with like 3 chapters of nothing but Star Trek lore. It's like, what makes Star Trek important? What makes Star Trek Adventures important, given what you know about Star Trek? Here's some information about the society and the culture and religion and IDIC and how things actually operate in the franchise and in the Star Trek universe. So that if you're a complete newbie coming into Star Trek, maybe you're casually interested, maybe maybe your partner is into Star Trek and you want to share a little bit of that. This is like a primer.
Yes.
For Star Trek. And then once you go through that primer, then you get into the character generation, the starship generation, and then you actually get into the how do you tell a story with that, and then using the randomized tables and stuff. So the outline, I'd say, fell together pretty quick once we had that list of priorities in line, because that helped me as a project manager and as an editor understand, okay, if this is the scope of this project, it must have these things, otherwise it's not hitting the target. Because without those chapters about what is Star Trek and like how does the Star Trek universe operate, in terms of there's no money, how does the Federation work, blah blah blah, and how do we condense that down into enough pages so that it's enough to get started, but we're not overwhelming you with 55 years worth of Star Trek content, right? Because we didn't want to do that. Right. I mean, this book is already 300 something pages long. I mean, really, it's awesome. It's truly a full blown core rule book, right?
Oh yeah.
But it's entirely focused on that solo experience. Even though we still managed to squeeze in some other stuff about, you could use it to play collaboratively with friends.
Yeah, you did.
Game Master, or a Game Master could use this book as a crutch or a tool to do traditional type of RPG. So there's a lot of. I mean, for those of you, I mean, Brad, I know you're familiar with like use cases and that kind of thing. Like we had a lot of use cases that we wanted to target with this. A lot of target audience. I'm a little nervous that maybe we went a little too broad with it, but I'm just going to wait and see what the audience says to it. So I guess that's the genesis in a long-winded fashion, is that Sam came up with the idea, and then just through the process of hammering out the concept and then the outline and then figuring out, okay, what actually has to happen. Once we had that in place, then we were off and running. I marshaled the forces, grabbed the writers I needed to grab, and put the hammer down and just started writing and pulling it all together. And then of course it went into development and all that boring necessary stuff that we've talked about on other books. So it came together really quick, all things considered. I think the hardest part was and this stop me if you want to ask some other questions. The hardest part, I think, was the playtesting part of it, because we had to take the existing 2D20 rule set and figure out, okay, we don't want to simplify it. We want to streamline it, right? We don't want to take all the good stuff out of it that makes 2D20 such a great system for collaborative storytelling or narrative storytelling. So how do we, not simplify, how do we streamline it so that a player can come in here, start telling a story, and boom, they're just off and running, and we don't have to get into the weeds about some of the mechanics. So that was probably the biggest challenge, was like, how do we make it all work and have it still feel, not just Star Trek-ish, but also Star Trek adventurous. Because again, one of our design criteria was, if a player enjoys Captain's Log, they could, quote unquote, graduate to the full version of the game, right? Using this as an on-ramp to the full version of the game if they wanted to, or they don't have to. Or they could go from Star Trek Adventures into Captain's Log just by not using everything that's on the character sheet, right? So we wanted to be very careful that we had very clear, easy conversion guidelines to take your Captain's Log character and graduate to the full game. Or if you're playing Star Trek Adventures and maybe your group collapses, or maybe you just can't find the time to play, and you still got that bug that you want to tell more stories, just take your Star Trek Adventures character and do some Captain's Log on the side, like while you're waiting for the next to play. Just tell some stories.
I mean,
I think for me, we've talked about point of entry. And I know that's not necessarily the right term in the context of books and all that. We come from kind of a similar background. I'm thinking technical, but point of entry in terms of whether you start with the Klingon or the standard core rulebook, or whether you start with even the quick start, or all these different ways to get into the game. And this was one way that and for me, thinking about use cases, here's a use case where I'm not a creative writer. I was telling Jason, I've always wondered about doing it, but here's a way for me to play creative writing and write fan fiction. And there's a toolkit and a methodology that allows me, being more analytically oriented, to do that.
So to case in point, our roles, Jim, were reversed yesterday. Brad and I are chatting on the phone, and we both have this in front of us, and we're reading through, and Brad says to me, I think we could use this and write fan fiction. And that was 180. It hadn't even occurred to me yet. And I'm like, yeah, done, sold. To go back to something you said, though, on that same note, the way you all streamlined the mechanics, I mean, it's just so elegant. I'm a sucker for a flowchart. I'm a sucker for a graph that visually is meaningful, and the character creation, because let's face it, in STA, I mean, having recently gone through this finally for my own PC, and I use the online tool, which is really fun, but character creation is almost always a challenge, because it's just, in a good game, it's chunky and you have your steps, and STA is by no means an exception to that. And then in the solo guide, in Captain's Log, you have it just like seeing the graphic and reading the explanations and the narrative graphic, if you will. It's like, oh my God, that just the whole picture, it's right there. And then again with the D20 system. And as I'm reading through, I'm thinking, if I had this when Brad and I started finally playing, even though we want to play, we're playing the full version, it's like, well, this would be an incredible reference. Like, I just think this, you had mentioned how you had titrated what was in the other guides, the Game Master, the Player's Handbook, whatever, into the beginning chapters of Captain's Log, right? Definitely that there's a primer there. Though I don't know that you're giving enough credit, because I thought it struck like that perfect balance of, there's a ton here, but like you said, it's not too like you want more, but if you're not geeking out, you're good to go. But I think this whole book, this whole guide, to me, it feels and reads like a primer for the entire set. Like you could start here and then like instantly move over to the core rule book. I just think that would be so effortless, because you'd just be adding some bells and whistles, and of course all the narrative and backstory. But in terms of like being at the table playing or GMing, that it would not be a big leap. I mean, it's like a half step to just have this explosion of riches after this guide. It's so interesting. And okay, so I got to ask, because I know Brad and I have been talking about this, and of course, as we said, the three of us were talking about this last time, and you know, when you had messaged us, you're like full circle literature and RPGs, which I just loved. And it's, but okay, so um, to what extent, if at all, what, and I say you're, but recognizing it's a team, right? You're at the helm, but that you're not the only one working on this. But to what extent was the literature element on your radar? Because I don't, maybe it's just because of where I am as a player now, but, and especially talking to you about the game in general, but the Captain's Log as a guide, and I mean this really positively, I've loved reading all of them, but this just to me has a bit of a different feel. Not the solo aspect, but it feels more literary to me. Is that just me, or was there intent behind it?
No, there's absolutely intent behind that. So, you know, I brought Michael Dismuke, got involved in this pretty early on, because at the time we were developing this, we were wrapping up the Discovery book.
Oh my God.
Working full speed ahead on Lower Decks. We were working on this one, and we were working on another book that hasn't been announced yet, right? So there was like 4 major products happening all about the same time, just by virtue of the wackiness of the schedules. Just they all kind of converge at the same time. And when I was working on those 4 books simultaneously, like I knew as a project manager, there is no way I can get all these done by myself, you know, at the level that I do. So I needed to bring on a couple of people who I trusted to be kind of like the lead writers of this book, and then another book that we haven't announced yet that I mentioned. But so Michael, because he had written a lot of the chapters in the Game Master Guide about writing, you know, effective writing, you know, storytelling, game mastering, using tropes, that kind of stuff. He also wrote the chapter in Lower Decks about storytelling and using tropes and comedy and stuff. So like he's really well grounded in that stuff. And I was like, well, you know, you've already been writing all this stuff. I'm going to tap you to help me out with this. Because like he runs his games are run on Discord, and they're asynchronous, where they don't get together for like 3 hours at a time to play. They just have this ongoing narrative of their characters.
That's cool. Which
is great for them. I think for me personally, I struggle with that kind of gameplay because I don't like being on 24/7. Like it's really hard for me to not feel like I'm missing out on something. That's a topic for another show, I'm sure. But anyway, so like I knew Michael would be a good fit for doing a chunk of this, and so knowing that he's got the literary background, I've got a literary background, of course. We were very, very conscious early on that a lot of people would probably be buying this, or you know, playing this just to write their own stories, their own Star Trek stories with their own characters, their own situations, using the probability matrices as either inspiration or guides, or as actual tools to say, you know, I'm stuck in this story, I don't know where I'm going, I don't have a creative bone in my body, I just want to play the game and have fun. Just roll some random tables. Maybe you're into rolling random tables, grab some dice, have some fun, and just see what happens. Like literally just see what happens. And so like we were very, very conscious early on that we wanted this to be more literary than any of our other products to date. Partly by virtue of the fact that I think every solo journaling game I've seen is literally a journaling game, right? Like people are doing blogs, you know, serialized blogs. They're, in fact, you know, I promised my social media manager that I would start looking into TikTok, even though I'm a little. I'm
looking forward to seeing that.
I'm Gen X, right? I'm not really into TikTok, but I've been very quietly. Like I started my account back in March or something, and I've not posted a single thing. I'll post a comment every now and then to somebody else's TikTok, but I've been studying it and I've been watching it, and I've been thinking, because I knew I was developing this book. I was thinking, how could I make Captain's Log work in a TikTok format? You know, two minutes maximum. What can I do in 2 minutes?
This would get me on TikTok.
And I don't know what that looks like just yet. Like I'm still trying to can I do a scene in 2 minutes? I don't know, but I could at least, you know, roll some tables and kind of like set up the scene and tell fans, okay, you know, here's where my character is. We're starting the scene. I'm going to roll on this table. I'm going to roll on this table. I'm going to roll on this table.
That's awesome.
I've got the inciting incident. I got my adversary. I got my stakes. And now I'm going to go away and I'm going to go write it. And maybe I'll put it on the blog or something. I have no idea. I'm just thinking about it, right? I think there's potential to throw this on TikTok. I don't know that I want to do it though.
I'm pointing at Jason because my failed attempt at doing Jason's cosplay costumes on TikTok was an abysmal failure.
I said to my girls at the dinner table sometime 1 or 2 weeks ago, I said jokingly, yeah, I think we're gonna get on TikTok for the podcast. I was kidding. And I swear I could see each of their souls die just a little bit. so yeah,
part of me recoils at that because like this is such a literary focused book. Yeah. Like I feel like it should be a blog or it should be a
okay, you know what? Hold on. Devil's advocate. Yeah. Devil's advocate. Deep in the pandemic, Patrick Stewart recorded, right? You've probably watched it like the rest of us. He did almost all of Shakespeare's sonnets. And he put them, and I would watch them just on like Facebook, right? But he did them across. Okay, see, and it doesn't get a lot more. And he was good. He skipped the truly offensive ones, but he did that, and they were horribly popular, and they were wonderful. I'm not saying you should use accents and dress in cosplay. You should. I'm not saying that, but I think he demonstrated that something. I think you, as long as you're not filming like from a gym where it gets awkward, I think you could do that really well, and it could bring people in.
Now you got the ideas percolating here, right? So now I'm thinking about it. Now it's going to stick in my head, and I'm going to be thinking about it. All right, darn it, I'm going to have to.
I've been on TikTok longer than Jason, and
I'm not on TikTok.
There's plenty of. I know there's like this bad, or I shouldn't say bad, but there's this belief that because we're all Gen Xers here, that's a Gen Z thing. But I find the way the AI and the algorithms cultivate, most of my content is not. So we could have a conversation. We could have a conversation offline about this. But I think there's actually like interesting value there because I go out there and my algorithms now have an inordinate amount of Star Trek content in it, just because of what I will tend to watch more versus squirrels on water skis and people. I don't know. There's also
we look forward to your TikTok videos. Bringing it home for Gen X.
Now I'm committed because I got the peer pressure in the back of my head.
God, that's funny. Didn't think we were going to go in this direction.
I'll figure it out somehow. I'll figure out how to carve some time out of my day to make this happen. So you've inspired me. So
that's seriously though, kudos. I'm really glad to hear what you're saying though about the no pun intended, but the writing of this, the intention of this, and real kudos to Michael Dismuke because I saw that he was lead writer and. I mean, it's just so well written as a guide. Like this is again, the GM guide, the players guide, they're all like that. But this one I think stands out even more. Like you just want to sit down and read it, and even like the character creation and the explanation of the mechanics. Like there are these subtle and not so subtle qualitative differences from what you've all come out with that I think really I found being. Now at this point really familiar with the game, I think it still pulled me in even more. Like just how cool is that? I wasn't thinking about that. Man.
Yeah. I think it helps that we had just written the player's guide and the game master guide. So a lot of this content, I mean, honestly, if you really look at the content, some of this stuff is pulled right out of the player guide and game master.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did a top-down edit. I did another fresh edit pass on it just to tighten up some things. And because I thought the content that we put together in those two books was really good and it deserved a wider audience because it was absolutely, I think, in my opinion anyway, and Jason, you mentioned it earlier, it was really hitting that kind of sweet spot of here's enough information for you to get it, but not so much that you're feeling overwhelmed or like you're pulling back and you're like, okay, this is too much Star Trek. We tried to find that fine zone, and I don't know, you know, some fans love it, some fans don't like it, but whatever. We just did the best we could to tweak that dial. And on this book, I was really intentional about giving myself more editing development time on the back end after the manuscript after all the writers delivered their manuscripts, and I had time to really dig into it. And so I was really intentional about putting more of a polish. I mean, not to say that we don't polish our books as best as we can, but like I knew that this was going to be hitting a different market and we're really hoping to get this into like Barnes and Noble and the box stores, and like really trying to play with distribution, because we think this has a much broader potential appeal than your core like RPG audience, right?
Yes.
See how that works, but yeah, I've lost the thread. I'm sorry.
No, that's the thread. No, you're right there.
No, you're right on
it.
it.
Okay, yeah. So anyway, the literary, absolutely, 100%. We really wanted. I think you know, as I've continued to work on the game as project manager and lead editor, we've really been leaning more toward these books are tools. They're toolkits. Use as many tools. We'll put as many tools as we possibly can in here for you, for the players and the game masters. And then this was just that next evolution of that to say, hey, you know what? You're a player who can't find a game master to run this game for you, or you're a game master and you can't find any players. You live out in the sticks of Nowheresville and you can't find literally anybody to play with, but you've got some friends online. Here's an opportunity to play this amazing game in this amazing setting, in this amazing franchise, and do your own stories, create your own captain, create your own character, whatever it is, and go tell stories, go tell Star Trek stories and share them. Like, and that's what we didn't really hit on in the book, was that whole sharing part of it. And I think that's going to happen organically. At least I hope so. Because I want to see the Twitches, I want to see the YouTubes, I want to see the TikToks, I want to see the blogs of people coming up with their own fanfic, or you know, or Star Trek stories or whatever, and doing amazing things with it. Because like, I am a voracious reader, and I will, you know, be honest. This is probably a guilty pleasure, but when I got my Kindle, right, I buy just tons of ebooks, and I'm on Kindle Unlimited, so I'm in the library system. So I'm constantly reading samples of new books all the time, because it like, I'm in the ecosystem, I might as well. And there's just so much to read right now, and it gives me the opportunity to try out new readers, right, or to try out new authors who I would never find in a bookstore, because just, you know, traditional publishing is all screwed up right now, in a variety of different ways, and we can talk about that in a future episode too. But honestly, most of the books I've been buying outright lately are Star Trek novels, because Simon and Schuster does a wonderful program every month. They have a slate of Star Trek novels available for 99 cents a pop, on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all this stuff. So they curate that list every month to make it kind of thematically connected to whatever's happening that month in the Star Trek.
Got it. Okay.
And so like, you know, I'll buy some of the old classic ones, and I'll buy some of the newer ones. And so I've got, you know, several hundred Star Trek novels on my Kindle.
Oh my God.
And like, when I have a spare moment, I'm reading something, Star Trek related, whether it's a comic book or a novel or whatever. And I want, because as a writer myself, I know how easy it is to publish stuff directly to your Kindle, right? You can just, you know, dump a Word document onto your Kindle and you can just read it. And that's how I edit sometimes my fiction. And I think there's ways that you can connect. What is that? There's a couple websites where you can just post fiction and people can read it and rate it.
Oh yes,
enjoy it. There's no money involved in it. It's just maybe there's another one. But anyway, if there's a way to connect that to a Kindle where people can just go to some random website and just download the files and read them for their leisure and joy, like there's going to be a huge universe of new Star Trek stories coming out.
Oh yeah,
hopefully based on this book. And I'm just looking forward to reading all those stories.
Cool.
So I'm excited for that piece of it, you know. But I'm getting ahead of myself because, again, literally this book just came out today, so we'll see what happens.
Well, but it's been part of the plan. And just, Brad, before you jump in, I just want to call you out, because you've been on a solo kick, not playing, but you've been talking to me regularly about like solo games and the concept of it, and what I mean for quite some time. I mean, for like the better part of a year, that's one of these perennial topics with you where you recognized this was coming, not from Jim, but just in general with the industry that we do see. I mean, obviously Modiphius just picked up that one solo guide, the
solo game masters guide that they did with Geek Gamers. Yeah.
Right.
And I picked that up when it came out.
Yep.
And I've read it through, and then I picked up Iron Sworn Starforged and Rangers of Shadowkeep, which is another one that can be done solo. And I've picked up solo guides just because I want to use it as a vehicle for writing. And stretching myself in an area where I traditionally don't dabble in, because it just hasn't been an area of, you know, my creative outlet has been music for the most part for years. But there seems to be, obviously back when Chris Birch and the team there put, license and then put out this Game Master's Guide. It feels like now with this guide coming out too, there's a real recognition within Modiphius itself too, that there is a market out there for people who want to game either as just a vehicle to game or as a vehicle to write. Again, I go back to what I said before. This material gives me the opportunity and a toolkit to write fan fiction. I don't have to sit down at a computer having never written anything like this before and go, okay, now how do I do this? Where do I start? Do I start with writing out a plot? Do I write out characters? What do I do? Well, it's all right there. And I'm not trying to sound patronizing. It's just, this is a different type of vehicle. I haven't seen this in my nerd researching out on the net for it. So I'm excited about the fact that it gives me that type of material to.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to cough.
No, it's like years, oh my God, probably close to 10 years ago now. I wrote over like a year, I don't know, like a half dozen-ish short stories, all with a different focus, which were never intended to go anywhere. I just wanted my hand at the creative part of it, right? Because writing fiction isn't normally my thing. And I just wanted to dabble because I thought it would just make me a better writer in my own work. And I think, man, if I had something like this, it would be incredible. But to go back to something else, just something
Can I interject? Because this is what I was going to mention. Sorry, Jace, before I started coughing.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to mention before I had my little coughing fit was how you set, and I think you were alluding to this before, but I kind of want to hit it direct, is how you are setting up the Trek universe for people who may not necessarily even have been involved in sci-fi. I could see people who might be sci-fi fans who don't necessarily know about Star Trek, or just assume that Star Trek is Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock, and that's the way it has been for 40, 50, 60 years. Chapter 1 talks about it, and it comes at it at a really, I think, unique and different angle. There's 10 facts. It has a science fiction setting. It presents a positive, hopeful, and vibrant forecast. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, are paramount. And it talks about these things, and it sets it up from the outset rather than go into kind of the tactical pieces of the rules and things like that. I know this sounds kind of like more like a statement than a question, but obviously this is something that you all had been working on or wanted to set as a foundational component when designing material like this. I just find this unique. You're usually going more into kind of the nitty-gritty tactical type of stuff, because that's what a lot of people are interested in when they pick up a game. What's the mechanic and all that. You're setting up the world. This is world building 101 right there in the first chapter. And it is, again, going back to our little theme, it's lit. This is a written literature chapter about the summary of the Star Trek universe. And that's unique and different. I mean, obviously, I'm assuming here this is kind of going back to your themes before, the direction you wanted to go from the start.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, not to take credit, I mean, this is the concept that I had when we were doing the Player's Guide and the Game Master Guide, right? Because we had a pretty broad remit for those two books too, because we really wanted those books to be. And this was, I think, the Player Guide and the Game Master Guide were even more of I don't want to say kludge, but like the target audience for those two books was a little muddled, if I have to be brutally honest, right? Because we were like, a good chunk of those books is really targeted at the existing Star Trek Adventures fan who wants more rules options, more characters, more stuff to play with in their game, more rules clarifications if you weren't quite clear on the rules, new rules options if you want new rules and stuff to play with. But we also really kind of wanted to target newer fans and bring new fans in. And so that idea was like, well, okay, so if we want to bring in new fans, we've got to explain the setting to a degree that we haven't done so before, because we need to be able to give this book to somebody and say, if you need a Star Trek 101, read the first two chapters of this, and then you'll get it. If you don't like it, then we'll go play something else. But if you get it and you like it, there's 55 years worth of episodes I can sit you down and watch with you, and then you really get it. Right. So where in my opinion, the Player's Guide and Game Master Guide, the target audience was a little messy because we were trying to hit a really broad spectrum, but also appeal to all the core Star Trek Adventures fans. But with this book, we knew that we were really going to aim this book at new fans, casual fans, people who were curious about Star Trek, everything else. So, I revised like the top 10 lists for Star Trek and Star Trek Adventures, revamped them, refreshed them, put a little bit even more of a focus and a polish on them, and put them in here. And Brad, you're absolutely right. We're really aiming at the literary aspect of it, because Star Trek is a literary franchise. Honestly, I mean, it's storytelling at its very core, whether it's on film or in comic books or in novels or short stories or whatever. I mean, ultimately, everything starts with the written word, and I think that's why there's still a strike going on right now.
Yeah, I was just gonna go there.
In LA, because if you ain't got a writer, you ain't got a movie, you ain't got a TV series. I mean, you can probably throw something together, but everything starts with the writer, and Star Trek is no different. Gene Roddenberry obviously was a writer and a storyteller, and we really wanted to pay attention to that. And also, I think because Star Trek has such universal appeal, and you've got new fans coming in, they may not understand the totality of what Star Trek is and could be. Maybe they're watching a few episodes of Lower Decks, they're watching a few episodes of Discovery, they're hearing what their friends are saying, they're hearing what people are saying online. They might have a mixed message of what Star Trek is or could be. And of course, I'm being a little facetious here, because who am I to say what Star Trek is or is not? This is all our opinion, right? This is, certainly Paramount reviewed it and approved it, but that doesn't mean we have their stamp of, this is Star Trek canon here, right? This isn't what Star Trek is, and we're going to put it on the pedestal. We're just thinking, after 50 or 5-6 decades here, we have a feel for what makes Star Trek an amazing science fiction property, to where there aren't really any other properties like it, right? That hits all the different markers that we've mentioned here, like the diversity, the equality, the inclusion, the sense of wonder that you get from the really amazing episodes where, literally, there's some episodes that I'm watching, and you might just see the Enterprise, do a flyby of a star, and you might see the star coming out over the planet. It's just this beautiful visual, right? And it's maybe 2 seconds in the episode, but you pause and you're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's something that I will never see for reals with my naked eye. I'll see the Hubble or I'll see the Webb telescope images, which are just amazing. Go check those out. Go to NASA and look at those beautiful images of the world and the universe around us. But you can bring all that to your story and to your game table or to your own narrative here. And so I really want to make sure that these 2 chapters really struck that nerve for people to say, Star Trek is a really amazingly cool setting and universe in which to tell stories and to create characters and have fun. Here's things to think about. Here's things that you should be aware of. If you're not already aware of them, maybe you're new to the franchise, come on in, join the party, and have some fun with it. So they were very intentional.
And I just want to, because I thought of something while you were talking, and I have a lot of different RPG books. We've talked about RPGs, all different ones all out there. And there's a lot of great material out there, other lines in the Modiphius family and others. I am finding in talking, when we've talked over past, year and a half now or so, or year, you seem to come at it from a little different angle. You come at it from being a writer. You're a project manager of a line and you work with a lot of very creative people, but you are like you said, you started writing, fiction. Do you think that makes, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot or put you on a pedestal, do you think that makes you in this role a little different than maybe others in the realm who lead these type of projects? Why bring it up? And I'm not verbalizing this right. Jason, I said this to you yesterday. You're coming at this from a different angle, I think, than other people do from books. They're gamers who love to game and they want to build games. It almost means like you're a writer and a gamer and you're trying to bring both to the table versus a lot of others who would be more like me, who would love to design a game, but I'm not a writer. I don't know if Jason, you and I mentioned this. I talked to this. I don't know if I'm verbalizing that right.
No, I think I get the gist. I think,
and I'm setting you up to make it sound like I'm trying to make you toot your own horn, and I'm not trying to do.
No, and I'm not looking to do that, right? I think one of the weird things, not weird, one of the things I've thought about once I became the project manager and I really started getting into the weeds of managing the project, managing the game line, also interacting with fans online, and just being a gamer and a player for the last 30 odd years. Like my particular gaming tastes have changed significantly over the last 30 years, because I started off playing very mechanic heavy games where that was the focus, right? You're like and I'm not disparaging Dungeons and Dragons by any stretch of the imagination. I love the game. I played many happy sessions of it. But it's very, like, especially 30 years ago, is very mechanics focused, right? And the groups I was in and the game masters I had, it was all about the mechanics. It was all about gaining XP, leveling up, getting loot, doing the next level, getting the new perks for the next level, etc. And the storytelling was kind of secondary to that, right? And of course, at the time, I was like, yeah, that's fine, because I didn't know squat about storytelling. I was just, just a dumb teenager. I didn't have the knowledge yet. But over the years, I gravitated more toward narrative RPGs and storytelling. And of course, that's about the same time I started ramping up my knowledge about how to write and taking writing courses and writing short stories and novels and all that shit. Excuse me. To this point now, where I'm I'm a much more established writer in my head of like, okay, I know what makes a narrative work, and I'm really into the narrative storytelling and the collaborative storytelling with my players. Like Star Trek is the RPG for me. Like not necessarily Star Trek Adventures, but like if I wanted to play an RPG or if I want to run an RPG, it's going to be Star Trek 99 times out of 100. And not that there aren't other great RPGs out there. It's just that Star Trek has everything I could possibly want in a IP and a storytelling franchise. Like, I mean, I can certainly create my own stuff, but it's still going to feel like Star Trek, because I want the diversity, I want the inclusion, I want the equity, I want the sense of wonder, I want the collaborative storytelling, I want the teamwork, the teammanship, the collaborative nature. I don't want lone wolf kind of stories. I want teams, because we're always stronger together. And so because Star Trek hits all those marks for me, it's like, well, why not just play Star Trek or run Star Trek, right? And being the project manager on this game and in this book in particular, I can't help but bring that perspective to it. Like to be honest with you, like I could care less about mechanics, right? And I know that frustrates some of the gamers out there, because like they'll ask very specific mechanical questions about the game and how the game should be played. And like if somebody else doesn't already respond to it, I'll be like, okay, we'll do this and do this because it's in the core book or it's in the rules. But if that doesn't work for you, just do whatever the hell you want, because you're not going to break the game.
Right.
We're not going to come to your house and tell you that you're playing it wrong. Just the rule set is so flexible. If you don't like this aspect of it, don't use it. If you don't like this aspect of space combat, don't use it. Just make it up. Be narrative. Tell the story, because again, in Star Trek, story is king, right? It just everything is flexible based on what the needs of the story.
That's what's different. And I'm sorry, I'm learning as I'm actually, this is a learning moment for me, because Star Trek is this is designed to be a literary RPG. From my perspective, there are other great games out there. That's just not their angle. Whereas this is, and that the material drives that way. I've talked to Jason. The material that I read is very different. Good quality stuff out there. Other space RPGs that we've recently talked about, great, cool stuff. But very different angle. So that was a selfish question. I probably could have done it.
No, it's not selfish at all. I think just and this is great stuff for me to think about too, as I'm developing other products. Is that we're really leaning, especially with this Captain's Log, we're really leaning more into the narrative and the yes and part of the game mastery, right? Like where if you're in a collaborative storytelling thing like an RPG, and your players are coming up with great ideas, it's like, oh, well, can I do this? Can I do that? You could stop the game and flip through the rule book and say, well, is there a rule for that? I don't know. And then flip, and then you just killed all the momentum, lowercase momentum, not the game. but there's something to be said for like being in the moment and being a game master and a player to say, oh, here's this cool idea that I've got for my character. Can I do this? And the game master just instantly says yes, and then just go with it. And do a task roll or something, or just narrate whatever's happening. Get away from the dice if you feel like the group trusts you to do that.
Right.
And I think that's what Captain's Log really leans into, because we've streamlined the mechanics to such an extent that you should just be able to just get right on into it. And in fact, I was telling Michael when we were working on the playtesting, I was like, Michael, I'm struggling a little bit because like you go through this procedural thing about like, roll for your inciting incident, and roll for your emissary, and roll for your circumstances, and roll for your environment, and all this stuff. And I'm like, that's fine, but like, if I've got the inciting incident and I've got the opening, shtick, I'm often running with the narrative, because that's just how my brain works, right? I'm already writing ahead. And he was like, well, yes, that's great for you, but for other people, you may not be able to put those dots together just yet. So we're giving them a little bit more guidance to like, well, maybe you need to roll on this table, and you need to roll on this table, and then think about how those connect and interrelate, and then you write the narrative. And I was like, okay, now I get it. Now I get what. So,
well, I mean, you have crunch at both. When I'm GMing Better Days for Jason right now, and
cool. Excellent.
And I came and again, I was a little less prepared because I was so enamored with the DS9. Jason knows this now. We're only an episode in, so I won't give anything away. But we came up on the idea of an extended task, and so Jason's gonna laugh. So we were paging through a little bit, and then we did exactly what you said. I'm like, we'll come back. We'll in effect sandbox that so that we learn it. But let's keep the story moving. So I just narrated through it. And
you still on
we're still on target, but that's exactly what you're talking about. We're going to come back because we want to understand.
We want to play through the extended task.
We want to understand the idea because it's actually a very cool way of handling those type of situations from a narrative perspective.
Absolutely.
But I didn't want to your point, I didn't want to kill the momentum, because it's him and I. This is our second or our third mission.
Our third adventure. It's the third. The third written adventure.
So I think you have crunch. You can go down the crunch route if you want. And you have both options, and it's nice that even from a solo perspective, you could do the same thing.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, it's still a game, right? And games have rules, and some people want to have that, some level of crunch. Turn the dial to how much you want, if you want a lot or you want a little. So I think hopefully that this appeals to a lot of different people, and all different stages of either narrative storytelling or just crunch and playing the game and using the random tables and stuff. So
I know as we start to wrap up, is this going to come in the same? Is it going to come in the same size as the players and GM's guide?
It looked like it. Yeah.
Awesome. It's funny because that seems to be kind of it feels even more like literature. When it comes in that size, like the GM and it feels novelesque. I know that Ironforge or Ironsworn Starforge comes in that same size. So I like the fact it's almost pocketable. I guess this is more of a nuance, just a little detail type of thing.
And that was very intentional. Yeah, absolutely. I think we really liked the digest size for the player guide and game master guide because it was something different. It was something interesting. I know some fans didn't care for it, but like once you got that leatherette texture going on, and
that's pretty slick.
It felt like a nice portable book that you could just throw into your briefcase and carry around with you to the coffee shop or whatever.
Yes.
And we really wanted that to go with this book because as a narrative tool, I could me personally, I would grab where the heck is it? It's around here somewhere. My Neo. I'm still writing all my first draft manuscripts on an AlphaSmart Neo. 20 plus tool.
You're kidding.
No,
that's awesome.
I love this tool to death because it is so perfect. Where is it? Again, your readers, your viewers can't see this. I'm looking frantically at my shelves. Where the heck is it? I just had it a little while ago. Anyway, so this thing,
that's like George R.R. Martin still writing the Game of Thrones books on WordStar on an old PCXT. That's kind of
But anyway, so awesome. I bought an AlphaSmart Neo back in 2003, I think, or something like that. I mean, a long time ago, and it had the rechargeable lithium battery in it, right? And that thing lasted forever. Like that, I could charge that thing, and I would get 400 to 500 hours off that thing, and it wouldn't even blink at me. But finally, after 21 years, that lithium battery finally started acting up. So I had to take it out and retire it. And now I'm just using AA batteries in the Neo. But even with 3 AA's, I can get 100, 110 hours out of it just using the AA's. And there's nothing that can beat that. There's no internet, there's no distractions, there's no games, there's no email, there's no nothing. It's just pure writing. It is the best writing tool I've ever had. And
interesting
to be able to take that, right? Because it's really just it's the same weight as a keyboard, basically.
Right.
So, like in my head, I'm like, okay, I've got my Neo, and I've got Captain's Log, that little portable digest-sized book. I can take that literally anywhere. I can go find my favorite tree and go sit in the grass and write. And of course, I'll have a couple D20 with me so I can roll on the tables. But I can go to a coffee shop. I can go to a restaurant. I can go literally anywhere. If I'm waiting for my son to be picked up from daycare, I can have it in the car with me. Just tip tapping away, and I got the book right there for reference. I really wanted to lean into that portability of being able to take the Star Trek universe with you anywhere you wanted to, because literally, I mean, there's enough material in here that you can do it. And if you've got a writing tool of some sort, I mean, frankly, I mean, so many people now write on their phones, which kind of baffles me. But people are using Google Docs to dictate stories into Google Docs so that you save it to the cloud, and of course you got it to massage later. So there's just so much. I mean, technology is so amazing right now that if you have a tool like this, or like the Iron Sworn or Captain's Log or whatever, there's no shortage of places that or means for you to start telling story.
Isn't that cool?
And putting it together, and then being able to share it with the universe, right? I mean, Kindle was a big piece of it because like it made indie publishing so much easier. You have with a few mouse clicks, you've got instant access to millions of readers around the world, right? The trick is discoverability, right? Well, that's a whole separate conversation. But if you have Star Trek already built into it, right, that's an immediate audience that will go, oh, this is a Star Trek story, and maybe they'll make it happen. Anyway, so I'm going on. I don't know how much more time you want to take.
That's really cool.
But, we
want to be cognizant of your time. We could talk, as well as I am.
I'm at your disposal, my friend.
Thank you. I don't know how you have I mean, I know we say this every time, but I don't know how you can put in so many hours awake and high functional.
I don't know.
They stopped. Well, I know they don't make Joe Cola anymore. That'll tie us back to the Gen X days. But
no, and it's funny. I was a Diet Cola fiend for a long time. I go through a 12-pack a week or something, if not more. And a couple of years ago, I was just like, I can't do this anymore. In fact, it was during the pandemic. I was just like, I just can't do this anymore. I'm just tired of it, and I just stopped. Like, I just stopped drinking soda completely. All I drink now is water. I don't do coffee. I don't do. I do tea maybe once in a while, like iced tea or something.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't doing anything for me anymore. So I'm just high on Star Trek, man, because it's such a great franchise and a great setting, and I'm in a unique position where I get to make cool stuff like this.
Yeah.
At this point, frankly, I'm doing this because I want to see what people do with it. I want to make these tools for people to go see, go have fun and tell your stories, and if I can help them do that, then that's mission accomplished for me.
I just think this is, and I'm trying not to say this in a way that sounds like we're asking for spoilers, because you know us better, but like the solo guide, it's such a new, different thing for the line. Like it's not a campaign guide. It's not another just quote unquote core rule book, all of which I love, but I just think it's so cool, like that you get to deal with this stuff so intimately, and obviously, guide the starship, but see the bigger picture of how this is all lining up, or hopefully, lines up. Like clearly you have an idea of what this is, how this all ties together, where this is going to go. It's just cool. I want to go back for a sec, excuse me, to this yes and idea, because Brad, you've been but maybe not in an expected way. You've been talking about this for a while with me, and then when we got our hands on the Captain's Log, on the solo guide, you were just like, "Yep, see, there it is again." I think you were saying this, Brad, but to put it another way, so with the yes and, I think one of the things that distinguishes all of these books under your benevolent overlord rulership is that it really truly seems that every book that comes out is iterative. And Brad picked up on this books ago. I didn't, but I think it's really clear. Like I said to you, Brad, it's really clear to me with the solo guide that we've talked about some other games. Some I know well, some I don't, and some of them, the big franchises for RPGs, they release a lot of books these days, and they're fun. And I've bought too many. But they're highly creative, but they're very much the same of what's
There's the
before.
library, Jace. You saying you bought a lot of books? There's my I'm in trouble library.
Brad's actually Brad ironically inspired me to sell a bunch of books, not Star Trek. And but I think a lot of lines, they publish lots of books. They're very creative, but the quality and whatnot is somewhat static, right? They've got their thing and they stay. But with Star Trek Adventures, you really can see with each one, there's an iteration. Sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's not. But they're getting, I mean, they started so well, but they're getting better, right? They're just a little cleaner, or like you said, even little things like cleaning up, optimizing, updating, the 10 theses of Star Trek. Just little things like that. And so, like, as elegant as the Game Master and players guides are, like, I think, as I said earlier this evening, I think the layout even qualitatively is just that next step. And even the subtle things like how you switch chapters and like, oh, now there's Vulcan in the background. That wasn't there before, right? And little things like it's cool to see how you got that yes and mentality to editing, to production, to leadership, that just each step, you're not just doing something new, but you're just doing it all a little better based on what you accomplished. And you kind of said something like that to us last time, Jim. Like, I couldn't do it here, so I decided to do it here. But it's like, clearly, I don't know, I'm just going on and on. Every book, it really seems that that's your shtick, right? Yours and your team's. Everything, it's not just more, it's even cleaner, it's even more engaging. And that's just, I don't know. I don't think you see a lot of that otherwise. Not in the industry.
Wow. Wow, Jason, that was super deep. And like,
sorry it was so long.
I can't thank you for saying all that. I don't care about recognition. I don't care about the industry such as it is, or the Emmy Awards, all that crap that's out there. Like, I don't care. I think, in my opinion, like, if I was going to be a little immodest, I'd say I think Star Trek Adventures has been kind of like running under the radar for a lot of people in the industry for a long time now. Because, like, we're cranking out, I mean, and crank, not to say in a bad, like,
no.
Not churning, but like the stuff that we're bringing out consistently month after month is solid. And like, I think Star Trek Adventures fans are enjoying an embarrassment of riches right now, because we are able to bring out so much content, whether it's PDF or book. And you're right, I am absolutely 100% intentional, and I'm really thrilled that you caught this. I am absolutely intentional. Every single product, I'm trying to up our game. I'm trying to improve it. I'm trying to do something different. I'm trying to do something bolder and different, and just trying to make it an even more useful tool, or a useful tool set, or like, how can we expand this? How can we broaden this? How can we push the boundaries? And like, I'm constantly pushing my writers to think harder about what they're doing. Like, let's go to the next level, take it to the next level. Get more creative, get more thoughtful. I am blessed right now. We have a great art director, Ariel Orea, who is like on my wavelength, but also a little different. Like, so he can push me, and he pushes back at me, and I push back at him, because we want to up the art game even more as well, to bring in even more diversity and inclusion, and body types and shapes, and
it shows especially in this one. And so we're really, like, I'm constantly trying to push the boundaries of what we can get away with in Star Trek books, or Star Trek RPG books. And so obviously I'm thrilled that you mentioned that you've noticed that. So thank you for that, because it just makes me appreciate being up in the middle of the night working on these books that 99% of the time, like, I don't care if anybody notices or not, but like, there's always that one little percent, like, gosh, I wish somebody would notice all the work we're putting into this, and the thoughtfulness that we're getting into, like, just changing up the layout, making it cleaner, making it easier to read, going with the white background instead of the dark background, and moving away from that. I mean, I like the Elcar's design, because it was very evocative of what we were trying to do 7 years ago. But things we're in a different place now. We need to get much more cleaner and readable. And I think Captain's Log, I think, is in a lot of ways a culmination of the last 7 years. But I don't know that we were intending to lead to this point, but all the best practices that we've learned over the last 7 years about how to present content
and thinking about the game and like how we want to present the game and the rules and like what do we want the audience to do with this. We were really intentional about making this happen, and hopefully it hits. We'll see. But ultimately, even if it doesn't hit, it's done. Like you'll appreciate this as a project manager, right? At some point, it's done. You put it on the shelf, you move on to the next thing. That project is done. It's nice in a tidy little box. It's over. And I can just enjoy, if fans like it and dig it, then we can just enjoy it. If it sells bonkers, then we just hit the reprint button and we don't even have to mess with it anymore, right? But ultimately, I'm being a little facetious here, but I hope, as a storyteller, but also as a rabid whale reader, especially Star Trek reader, I hope fans take this and eat it up, and I hope they just create amazing stories in the Star Trek setting, because
so cool.
We were like, one of the early discussions we had about this book was, do we want it to be Starfleet focused, just like all of our other books, right? Like the original core rule book, very focused on Starfleet, because that's what we see on the majority of the episodes of the series, right? Most of the series are Starfleet focused, and I was like, yeah, we should certainly make Starfleet the priority, but because now we're 7 years into this game line, and we've already been doing this with the Player's Guide and the Game Master Guide and some of our other products, we've been expanding that scope. Picard came out, the series, of course, that's about former Starfleet or non-Starfleet.
Right.
You got Prodigy, which is all about non-Starfleet becoming Starfleet. So there's just even more layers of storytelling potential now. Even with I think DS9 was kind of the pioneer here, where they brought in Kira and Quark and Nog and Odo. Like, these are very clearly non-Starfleet characters, but they're main characters in their own right, and they're standing right there alongside Starfleet, telling amazing stories. And then they expanded on that in Voyager and Enterprise and so on and so forth. But anyway, so I was very, very conscious right from the very beginning that I wanted this to have the potential to be broader than just playing a captain and playing on your own ship. Initially we were like, this should just be about captains. You're playing a captain because everybody wants to be a captain. And I was like, yeah, are you sure about that? Really? Because
that's right.
We specifically decided not to do that.
When we're playing, we're doing science officers. I will say that, like, we've talked about this a bit with you in the past, but it's been like gently, increasingly obvious that you're broadening it in the recent books. And I mean, maybe it's not blatant, but I thought it was pretty obvious in Captain's Log. Like that canvas got a lot broader. And as you said, canon has given all of us and has given you guys that much more of a patina to work with because of what they've done with these recent shows that we never. I think it makes it that much easier for players who don't know the game but know Trek to just get into it. I will very, very quickly before we wrap, because we got to be mindful of your time, but I got to just say this because I have to say, share a funny story. Brad will like this, because it's to your point. So we recently were playing Lurkers, and that's Christopher Bennett, right? Did I get that right? Okay, and so now we're on our third adventure already. I GM'd the first two. Brad is GMing now, but I was GMing Lurkers. Brad was playing as a science officer, right, a lower decker. And first of all, right away, it stood out that even though I was reading different adventures from different writers, oh my God, are they well written? I mean, these are air quotes, just right. Canned, brief PDF adventures, and so I didn't come in with really high expectations. And I mean, I'd be like, I was texting you, Brad, like, I can't believe this is like this. I mean, it's just so beautifully written. Okay, so great. It's so much fun to read. It's so easy. I'm because I can't help it. I'm hardly homebrewing anything. Like, I might be tweaking a few things here and there, but out of interest or fit or desire, never necessity. And we get into, what is it? I think we get to like the transition from Act 2 to 3 in Lurkers. And by this point, Brad, as his PC, has completely gone off the rails of the adventure. And I own it. It might have just been really poor GMing, but things are going along. We're having a great time.
I played a character. I was playing it in a way I don't think you expected, though.
It was great.
You know?
Yeah, you were playing it really in character. Absolutely. And we're playing and it's great. And we're kind of drifting not a big deal. And then Brad makes a decision that is just like I'm skipping like 2 pages, 3 pages in the adventure. And he's like, "Is that a problem?" No. It's good. And so that was where we paused naturally. Like next week then we jump in for the next one. And I'm like, "Okay, I need a couple days because I have to sit down and kind of see what I can retcon." So I sit down, I keep reading, and it's like I don't actually have to do anything. I literally just hear a couple things, boom, suddenly Brad's back in the story through no doing of my own. And I'm just assuming that is part and parcel of what you've been trying to accomplish, right? That it's, at least as a user, right? As an end user, if you will, it feels the same in these adventures. Like, it's not just in the books, but these adventures are just so well written and so durable that, like, GMing a couple of them now, and then now playing in them, like, I never felt pigeonholed. I never felt like I've got to get us to X, Y, or Z, because kind of no matter what happened, as long as we stayed remotely on track, it was just all there for us.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, it's just an observation, but I was not expecting that, and because it's and some of these are pretty basic adventures too, but it's just like it's writing. It's like I've been loving reading them because they're just so damn fun to read.
And we're duetting this. There's one GM, one player, and then we'll have GM PCs.
Yes.
Where you'll be playing a PC as well as jamming it. But as we wrap up, I'll say this that I've gotten a lot of different solo material, add-ons, bolt-ons for games, a lot of great stuff out there by great authors. This is the first guide that I've read that comes at it from the perspective of, hey, do you want to write? Do you want to game and maybe do some writing, or do you just want to game? Do you just want to write? It gives you the option to do it. And it's written with the idea that here's the game written in solo person form. There's not a lot out there for that. So for, whether you're a Trek fan or not, if you're a sci-fi fan,
you're going to have
again,
a ball with this book.
we don't get, and again, I want to, I think this goes without saying, we've said it before, we don't get spiffed for any of this stuff. No one gives us freebies or anything like that. We do this because we love to do it. And it's because we've been looking for this type of material. So, to you and to the team there, all the way up to those that sanction it, Chris and so on. Thank you for this material. I look forward to using it. Jason and I already have plans for our blog and apparently now TikTok.
No. That Jim's doing TikTok. We're going to watch Jim doing TikTok.
No, remember, I've already got our plans. I've already got our plans. The Peter Pan outfits in the FedEx for you coming up there. So we're going to do Jason's cosplay TikTok.
You don't have the time for how many things are wrong with what you just said.
No, but jokes aside, thank you for
so much. Yeah.
For joining us tonight to talk about this, and for, we just talked to you a little while ago for actually being willing to come back on, because we would talk to you about this stuff for hours. I looked it up because Jason and I were talking. I bought the STA book. I was a pre-order when it first came out and announced back in 2017. So I've been a connoisseur for a while, so I've seen the changes in the line.
We will have index fingers hovering over trackpads come August 3rd. To put it mildly.
And obviously, you've teased enough saying there's other stuff coming, so we're going to have you back when that other stuff comes.
Yeah, and at some point, it's up to you entirely, of course, but it would be fun to do a show just where we don't have a new product to push, right?
Yeah.
Not that we're pushing it, but
no,
we didn't, like, tonight. This has been a great conversation, and we hardly even touched the contents of the book, right? There is so much stuff in this book that we could talk about, and like connecting this book to other books in the line, or just in general. So like, there's just a wealth of stuff here, but I just love talking to you guys because you get where we're going, or where I'm going with it, and you're literary and you're writers, and you're passionate about the storytelling and everything else. It's just a joy to be here, and I'm grateful every time you invite me back.
Well, we love talking to you, and we are so appreciative that you waste your time with us. And it obviously, I mean, everyone already knows, but it's worth saying. So you and Michael, though, on continuing conversations, you are going to be
Yes.
going through this chapter by chapter, like you've done with the other books, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, everybody, anyone who's listening to this, we should all plan on listening to that for the in-depth review, because I mean, you guys, anyone who's listened to your conversations on the other books, I mean, you really get into nitty-gritty. They're just absolutely fascinating to listen to, from the horse's mouth. So everybody stay tuned. Yeah, listen, watch, all of that good stuff. Jim, always a pleasure. Be well. Man, keep it up.
I will try. We're still cranking. The machine hasn't stopped yet, but yeah, thank you so much, Jason. Thank you so much, Brad, for having me on. Uh, all the best to your show. I love listening to it every day. I mean, not every day, but every week when you have a new episode come out. It's one of the few podcasts that I listen to regularly and faithfully. And I love the quality
Thank you
that you
Thanks so
have
much.
on, and just looking forward to the next one. Thanks you all. Really appreciate it.
I mean, what does one say to that, Brad? First of all, a huge thank you to Mr. Jim Johnson, a scholar and a gentleman, and a huge set of props to Michael Dismuke, because he was the lead writer on Star Trek Adventures Captain's Log. Michael, we really want to have you on the show. We love your work. We are
Yes.
hoping you would waste some of your time with us. I mean, Jim's got pretty bad judgment, so we're hoping if you guys are that close together work-wise that maybe you also have poor judgment. But I mean, just Brad, man, what an incredible book. What an incredible opportunity. We are flattered, Jim, that you thought of us early on. Um, Before I hand it over to you, Brad, I don't know how else to put this in terms of praise wise, and I don't want to be overly effusive, but when I think of all of the role playing books, materials, etc., that I have, and I will preface this with, although not one of these episodes has yet to drop, as always, stay tuned. We have had the good fortune, as we're recording this, but not as has yet dropped, to chat with some of the people behind what I think are the absolute best RPG books out there, regardless of genre. Now, no disparagement to anything else. We both
No.
have nice collections. We were talking before we recorded how much we enjoy playing some other games, including fantasy, how much we want to get into some other games in the coming months. But here are, courtesy of Jim and Michael, here are my top three, because this is where I think Star Trek Adventures Captain's Log sits, certainly for me, in terms of RPGs as literature, in terms of just sheer creativity, in terms of like enjoyment and readability. Here they are in no particular order. Maybe I could come up with one, but I'm not going to. The original West End Games Star Wars Game Master's Guide, or Game Mastery Guide. I think that remains the single best GM guide, quote unquote, that's yet to be written. It's
Yeah.
phenomenal. Number two, again, not in an order, just number two, the Genesis Expanded Player's Guide. It is incredible. I regularly, over these past couple years of having it, will take it out, flip through it, just to get my thinking going about culture, science, art, RPGs, mechanics. It's all there.
I call it a catalyst book.
Yes.
I call them
Yes.
catalyst books because they are like a chemical catalyst. They fire,
Yes.
they help fire up
Yes.
the to get the creativity going.
And then number three, this will be no surprise to anyone listening at the moment, especially if you were to take really the strengths of what those two that I just mentioned. We've got Star Trek Adventures Captain's Log. It's the first book, you were getting to this before, Brad. It's the first RPG book, really any book where I've read where it sits down and teaches you how to write in a genre as you go. And I say this as someone who these days writes a lot. And this book has me, Captain's Log has me jonesing to write sci-fi like I've never before. So that's how I see this, and I cannot wait until I get a physical copy in my hands. What, my friend, are you thinking?
Yeah, you said it better than I could have. I think for me, there's a lot of great material out there for genres and playing solo. I've been
Yeah,
I've been a
yeah,
proponent of it. I've looked at it.
big time.
This book teaches you how to play solo Trek, but it teaches you how to write fan fiction in the Trek universe. And in effect, if you struggle with the idea of whether or not you can be creative or not, which I have done in the
Mm-hmm.
past,
Mm-hmm.
um, think of this as your training wheels to show you and teach you how to use the 2D20 engine and the
Yeah.
Star Trek Adventures material to do that. I will also say kudos to Jim, especially for having probably one of the best poker faces I have ever seen, because we had this long discussion about RPG is lit,
Part one and two, and he didn't give a single thing away.
anything
Oh
away.
my
He
God.
gave nothing away. And all I imagine, Jim, all you had to do was just sit there and smile in your mind and go, boy, are they going to be surprised when they get a hold of this, because this is exactly what we've been
Literally
talking
what we
about.
were talking.
And again, this is again, I'm not disparaging anyone, but I hope other game companies, and maybe there's material out there. I haven't seen it. Jason, I've researched books till the
Oh
cows
yeah.
come home.
Yeah.
Um, you know what? Take the book if you're other companies and see how they've done it,
Yeah.
because I think there's validity
Yeah.
in doing this for folks
Mm-hmm.
who want to write,
Yep.
stories in their favorite RPG universe or with their RPG engine. And there's an opportunity there. RPG is lit. And let's be honest, and again, I don't want to go too far down the path, but there are folks who can't find an area to play a game. They aren't
Yep.
necessarily sold on the idea of Zoom gaming or whatever.
Mhm.
They may be, there are a lot of people out there that suffer from anxiety and don't
Right.
necessarily want to be in groups. Here's an opportunity to enjoy Star Trek and enjoy
Yeah.
a RPG game, and they give you everything you need to play and enjoy it. And so
Yeah.
again, like you said, not to be effusive, but um this is just so unique
This one
to
stands
me.
out. It's
Yeah.
it's it's going to be good for the mind, good for the soul, right? It's
Yeah.
it's and it translates back to STA very directly.
Yes.
So like I know in going through the book, going through Captain's Log, I now have a better understanding of some of the things that were tripping us up as we've been learning STA in terms of like the momentum complications, things like that, where it's a little more nuanced.
Well, and even if you, let's say, for example, you want to use this as a learning curve to learn the game. And I believe, because we're recording our intro and outro just a little bit later than when we had the
Mm-hmm.
interview, um, I believe Jim said it, or we talked about the fact that you can use as much or as little of the engine as you want
Right.
to write your stories. So
Right.
if you're learning and you're coming up against something where the mechanic is just confusing to you in some way and you're just learning it, well, you know what? Be creative and make the decision in your mind
Yeah, that's right.
and move forward. And the material allows you, as much as I say you use the STA agent, you can use as much or as little as you want.
Mm-hmm. And Jim was clear about that.
Yeah, very
Their
clear.
goal is compelling narrative and have fun with the mechanic along the way to the extent it serves you. Crunchy to more sublime.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, everybody. I can't say you heard it here first, but we are honored to be among the first where you might have heard it. Go out there, get to StarTrek.com, get to Modiphius.us or .net, and pre-order your copy now. I have to assume that we're purposely recording this right before it drops.
I know where you're going
I
with
have to
this.
assume that Brad, you and I, by the time this drops, will have already pre-ordered
Oh
it.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And everyone, thanks as always for being with us. And stay tuned. Lots of really interesting episodes coming. And this fall, as Brad mentioned earlier in this episode, stay tuned for details on our upcoming blog, our fan fiction story, coming online, free, and looking for feedback. Fall. We're thinking September, October.
Yeah.
Be well, stay well, live long and prosper.